Good morning and a warm welcome, Sage, for 𝐿𝐴𝐴 TV, reporting to you live from Sydney, and you are watching the Global Markets Roundup. Let's dive into some key highlights and happenings from Friday, starting with the US market. And the benchmark US indices closed lower on Friday, September 10th, after broad losses across stock segments, and the latest economic data showed inflation rose marginally in August. The S&P 500 was down 0.77%, while Dow Jones fell 0.78%. The Nasdaq Composite shed 0.87%, and the small cap Russell 2000 was down as well, 0.96%. The Producer Price Index, an important gauge to measure inflation, rose 0.7% in August after rising by 1% in the past 2 consecutive months. According to the Labor Department, it was the highest 12-month jump since November 2010. Fed Chief Jerome Powell had earlier said the current inflation is transitory due to a bottleneck in supply chains. Healthcare and utility stocks were the bottom movers, while materials and energy stocks were the gainers on the S&P 500 on Friday. And 7 of the 11 index segments ended in the negative territory. Stocks of Affirm Holdings surged 34.64% after reporting strong quarterly earnings on Thursday. Its revenue rose by 71% year over year, reaching $261.8 million in the fourth quarter of financial year 21. Stocks of Take-Two Interactive Software declined 1.35%. The Kroger Co. stocks fell 7.13% after it said supply constraints and rising freight costs might hit its profits. The company reported its second quarter earnings on Friday. Apple stocks dropped 3.31% after a federal judge ordered the company to change the way it operates the App Store. In the healthcare stocks, United Health Group Incorporated fell 1.86%, Novartis AG declined by 1.12%, and Medtronic plc fell 1.69%. Looking over the futures and commodities markets now, and the gold futures were down 0.62%, and silver decreased by 1.64%, while copper rose 3.26%. Brent oil futures increased by 2%, and the WTI crude was up 2.27%. And moving across now to the bond market. And the 30-year Treasury bond yields were up 1.83% to 1.934, while the 10-year bond yields rose 3.29% to 1.343. US dollar futures index increased by 0.19%. And thanks for joining us so far, but it's now time for a small break. Please stay tuned as I'll be back with the Australian and London market updates. Hi, I'm Sage, and get ready to take the crypto ride with me on 𝐿𝐴𝐴 TV. Watch the Crypto Buzz every Tuesday and join the excitement at 𝐿𝐴𝐴 TV. From Bitcoins to NFTs to Dogecoin and DeFi, we have updates about everything around these digital currencies. Understand the investing rationale and the risks involved in the space with me, Sage, on Crypto Buzz. Keep watching 𝐿𝐴𝐴 TV. Thanks for joining us. This is Sage. You're watching 𝐿𝐴𝐴 TV, and we are amidst the Global Markets Roundup show. And the London markets traded on a mixed note after the release of several macroeconomic indicators. The UK GDP had shown a month-on-month increase of around 0.10% during July 2021, the slowest since January 2021. And furthermore, the manufacturing output remained unchanged during July 2021. And meanwhile, the UK trade deficit remained larger than expected at £12.71 billion. And Spectra shares went up by about 0.65% after the company completed the share buyback program for a maximum consideration of up to £200 million. PureTech healthcare shares dropped by around 0.15%, even after the company's Vor Biopharma unit announced that VOR33 got US FDA approval for acute myeloid leukemia. Gresham House had agreed to purchase Venture Capital's Trusts business for initial consideration of £24 million. and subsequently the shares rose by around 1.08%. Cineworld Group shares went down by around 1.05% after the company reached an agreement with dissenting shareholders of Regal Entertainment Group. And the Australian benchmark index ASX 200 on Friday. The index rose 0.5% to 7,406.6 points. And shares of a few companies, including Chorus, Helios and Hub24, are going ex-dividend on Monday. Gold futures were down 0.62% to $1,788.90 per ounce. And the uncertainty over the US Fed's tapering timeline was exerting pressure on the precious metal. Gold miners, including Newcrest Mining and Northern Star Resources Limited, could trade lower on Monday. Silver decreased by 1.64% to $23.78 per ounce, while copper rose 3.26% to $4.4250. On the other hand, traders bought crude oil due to tighter US supplies. Brent oil futures increased by 2%, up to $72.88 per barrel, and WTI crude was up 2.27%, reaching $69.69. And the energy stocks such as Woodside Petroleum Limited and Santos Limited could trade higher on Monday. And that is all for now. Keep watching Kalkine TV for more market updates. Sage signing off.